Hello, Ernie. Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine so far. The night's still young, but yes, go ahead.
I'm very happy to be here to talk about your new book. But first, tell us about your story, who you are.
My background: I was born in Ohio, raised in Pennsylvania, Estados Unidos, and I graduated. I was born in 1944, which is a few years back, and I graduated high school '62. I went in the military, Air Force, '63 to '67, and spent about a year in Vietnam, '66, '67. When I got back, after a little while, I wanted to be a mechanical, which is what I was in the service. So that's what I did. That was my career, and I got on with several airlines, and it wasn't easy, but that's what I wanted to do.
Okay. Well,
And then I got married in '74. My wife passed in 2019. That's 45 years. And she's from Mexico City, and I met her family here. And I realized I have more family here in Mexico than I have in the United States.
okay. So you feel like a Mexican.
Half.
Okay. Uh, Briefly, what is your book about?
Um, my wife introduced me to the Niños Héroes, the Hero Boys,
Mhm.
50 years ago when I asked her about a picture I saw. And she told me the basic story.
Mhm.
And that began it. And then after that, and several books and years later, I learned more and more about
Mhm.
how things were. Um, the United States authors don't say much about the hero boys.
Okay.
They talk about the U.S. Mexican War from beginning to end, but very little detail. So I I wanted to show something more detailed and show my respect for the, the cadets because the way they described it in the history books, something wasn't right. So I had to make my point of view.
Which was your motivation for writing about the
I
Hero
wanted
Boys?
to clear the air.
Okay.
In other words, the Niños Héroes are only celebrated on the 13th of September every year. Six of them, not a mas, nothing else. And I don't think that's right
Okay.
because I found more names of cadets that died and one that didn't, but they're not mentioned. They're not remembered. But that's not the important thing. The important thing was all the cadets that stayed against orders. They wanted to stay and fight for their country. The ultimate patriotism is giving your life for your country, and you can only do that one time. You can't give two lives. And I wanted to show all the cadets that stayed to fight. They were all heroes, and I think that's right.
Okay.
And I'd like to give that information out there to the public because I think it's important. I think it's important
Why do you think it's important to know what really happened in Chapultepec in 1847?
to instill a sense of patriotism. This is over 150 years ago, but people were patriotic, and you don't have to be high class to be patriotic. Uh, that's another part of the cadet program. They were all the upper class, except a few. They had sponsors, and they got them into the school, the, the the program, and they were all patriotic. They wanted to defend their country any way they can. And I don't know if they thought about it. I assume they thought about it. They weren't going to beat the Americans. They were going to either get captured or die. There's no other choice.
Okay.
And I think they were all heroes, and that's what I want to show.
Who should read this book?
Young people.
Okay.
The old people, they are already set in their ways, and they may or may not believe anything different than what they've been told. But the young people are not being taught anything in school. I talked to some high school kids, I talked to some university students, and then they know very little about what happened at Chapultepec. And some of them didn't even know they had a war. They didn't know that the United States and Mexico had a war. No, not a battle, a war. Chapultepec was the final battle of that war. And General Scott, he was in charge of the Americans. He had to take Chapultepec before he could take Mexico City. And he couldn't bypass it. So it was a necessary thing. And there's always other details, like the Molina del Rey. They thought that was a foundry for cannon. They were melting down church bells, making cannon out of them. It wasn't true. But the United States lost over 800 men attacking Molina del Rey. And then we found out that there was nothing there. Now they had to go to Chapultepec, and they weren't happy. They were mad. It's not just a military tactical thing. They were mad. And this was the situation that the regular Mexican contingent plus the cadets that stayed, this is what they faced. And what's sad, maybe not, but their weapons were muzzle loaders.
Okay.
I mean, you had one shot, and if you got them, okay. But you didn't have much time to reload.
Okay.
And so some of these cadets, their rifles were taller than they were. That's how disproportionate it was.
They were fighting in disadvantage.
Well,
Definitely.
that's subject to interpretation. They were defenders.
Yes.
They weren't offensive. The Americans had to attack them. So, in that regard, Chapultepec was an advantage. In that regard.
Okay.
Not much of an advantage, but it was there. The original 6 cadets that were found, they're celebrated every year since then, 1847. But since then, or shortly thereafter, they found 3 more cadets outside the castle, dead. 3 more. They had one cadet that was wounded, and he died 3 days later. I have their names. The government doesn't recognize nothing. There was one boy that got wounded in the arm. He had to have it amputated, but he lived.
Okay.
Nobody remembers them. They don't know nothing about them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's wrong. I think they should all be remembered, recognized, and honored.
Well, let's keep all that valuable information for your readers in the book. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And well, let's show people this book. I think they will. We as Mexican we will learn a lot about.
I
this.
think
Okay.
this is a very important
Okay.
information for them.
Okay.
And hopefully the schools will feel the same way.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're
Right.
welcome.